I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. My friend and colleague Gordon Chang, Forbes.com, joins. The president scheduled to be in Asia right now, the critical APEC conference with members of Asian trading partners, and on to ASEAN, which is also a large collection of Asian states. There is on the agenda out there a conversation about TPP, which is a trade agreement that's going to stretch across the Pacific Rim, all states, including the United States, involved to great advantages. But the president chose not to go, and we're going to come to that in just a moment. Right now, there's breaking news out of Japan. There is an unusual radiation spike at Fukushima, the reactor catastrophe of 2011. The news today on this, with this spike, is that Prime Minister Abe is ready to ask for global help, global aid to contain the disaster. Gordon, a very good evening to you. 2 years ago, right after the tsunami struck and the disaster started, this is a all fall down the steps disaster, gets worse all the time. Japan was reluctant to ask for international aid, even though the facts are that the United States and Russia have a lot of experience and a lot of resources. Certainly the U.S. does in the Navy. Why didn't Japan ask then, and why is it easier for the Prime Minister to ask now? Good evening to you, Gordon.
Good evening, John. I think in the wake of the disaster, there was a feeling that the Japanese themselves could handle it. So it was politically unacceptable for Prime Minister Noda at the time to ask for help from the international community. And indeed, the Ronald Reagan, our aircraft carrier, was there. They had teams on the carrier that were experts in nuclear cleanups. They could have been used to great effect then. Right now, I think that with problem after problem, including the last one of just a few hours ago, the Japanese people realize that TEPCO, Tokyo Electric, the operator of the plant, cannot handle it. And I guess there's really little confidence that the Japanese government, if it nationalized the plant, could do any better. So I think that there is just a recognition of reality that they do need to bring in some assistance from the international community, especially the United States.
There's trouble in China. Gordon flagged a story for me. This is right now reporting out of Radio Free Asia of violence, gunshots, police firing on unarmed Tibetan protesters in an autonomous region of Tibet called Driru. Gordon, we've reported for years now on the fact that the Chinese authorities are brutal towards the Tibetans when they protest the occupation and domination of their land. But opening fire, that's new to me, opening fire on protesters.
Well, also opening fire on 60 protesters. So this really looks like a large-scale event. The Chinese authorities have opened fire in the past, but on onesies and twosies, this is starting to look like something major. And I believe that when the Communist Party falls, that there should be basically international court cases against Chinese leaders for horrific policies, not only in Tibet, but also in East Turkestan or Xinjiang province, where you have the same brutal, horrific policies that really are crimes against humanity. The
self-immolations are protests of the Chinese occupation. But this particular protest, looked like what you'd have to say is straight-up resistance right out of the Gandhi age or any other protest where people use nonviolence to march, and the Chinese authorities open fire. This is not Hu Jintao Chinese authorities. This is Xi Jinping visiting in his colleagues in APEC and ASEAN Chinese authority. Does this stain Xi Jinping? Is this a mark against him that they've now killed under him?
Well, he's certainly the mark against Xi Jinping, and it's a mark against every Chinese leader for doing this. Xi Jinping can go around the region and smile at the Malaysians and the Indonesians, but everybody knows how bad a regime he runs. And they also know how belligerent he has been to China's neighbors. It is inconceivable that a regime that is, would treat its neighbors well, could do that if it treated its own people so poorly. Everyone knows that's the nature of the Communist Party, that it's bad to its own people and it's going to be bad to its neighbors as well.
I'm looking at a photograph right now of Xi Jinping smiling at APEC in Bali, and right next to him, gesturing in an open, friendly fashion, is the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping, without Mr. Obama, dominates this conversation, and Vladimir Putin's right behind him. Gordon, the president didn't go. We, on Friday, puzzled why. The president's calendar is clear. He is not supposed to be in Washington, so there's not much for him to do on his calendar. Why didn't he go, Gordon? I still can't figure this out. There's work to be done. He could certainly maintain connection with Washington in Asia.
This is all about politics, John, and the president wants to emphasize how bad the shutdown is and that it's all the fault of the Republicans. So essentially what he is doing is he's undermining American interests abroad and also the peace and security of Asia because he wants to score political points on the Republicans. Also, I have to say that the Republicans share some fault here because they made it clear that they were going to criticize Obama if he did go to Asia. So they both deserve condemnation from the American people, because this political system is failing us, because what could happen in Asia could be extremely serious given the trends that are occurring at this moment.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, that's certainly big business that John Kerry now does in the president's stead. The Secretary of State is attending in his stead. Is that aimed at China, Gordon? Because Xi Jinping is maneuvering around to suggest that he's not threatened.
Well, it certainly is aimed at China because China is the only major economy that is in East Asia that is not included in this Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, the Chinese have their own rival to the Trans-Pacific Partnership that they're pushing forward at APEC and at ASEAN, the two major meetings that President Obama has chose to skip. And if he is able to put those in place, and if we're not able to put the Trans-Pacific Partnership in place, that is going to be a major setback to the United States that will last decades. And the president's failure to go there to push his Trans-Pacific Partnership agenda really is, I think, a very serious and very difficult to make up problem.
The CNN correspondent here writes the observation that Mr. Obama's withdrawal from the trip is a gift for Putin and Xi. Do you agree with that, Gordon?
Absolutely, John. This is self-inflicted. It leaves the stage open to Xi Jinping to say all sorts of things which are obviously not true. Now, fortunately, leaders around Asia understand how bad China is, and so China is not making as much progress as I initially feared. But nonetheless, it is permitting the Chinese to make advances that otherwise would have been blocked by the United States. Because John Kerry, he sort of looks good, he sounds good, but he clearly is not up to the task. And the Chinese are running circles around him from every report that I've read.
And Vladimir Putin, Xi and Vladimir Putin are looking like pals here. That's not my information. Are they friendly?
Well, they are friendly, and that's a problem because right now both Beijing and Moscow see themselves as having common interests, and those common interests are undermining the United States.
The world without the U.S. Here we are. Gordon Chang, Forbes.com. I'm John Batchelor.